Hey everyone, Sarah at Nova Motorcycles again. This week we're going to do something slightly different and talk about technique and also just changes in time over how do you start a motorcycle. They're very different from the old stuff to the modern stuff. We have a lot of customers who come in buying their first vintage bike and have a really hard time getting it started. So we're going to talk about a couple of models here that are emblematic of the eras that they come from. Starting with the hardest, the oldest, and a very notorious machine, BSA 441 Victor. This one is a 1970, I believe. It's been repainted. But it is a big single. It's a 441, about 500 cc's. It's an English bike, which means it's got dodgy electrics to begin with. And no electric start whatsoever. It also has the ancient AML carburetors. And they have their own starting technique as well. So any old bike, I say anything prior to 1980 or so, you always want to have the fuel off when you start because you were smart and you turned it off when you parked it. So you start by turning the fuel on. Having your fuel off on an old bike and a carbureted bike just really helps, eliminate any potential problems that can happen if the carb isn't in perfect shape, and it can cause all sorts of problems if you don't turn your fuel off. So we did that. Now, on an English machine, on an AML carburetor, instead of using a choke, or sometimes in addition to a choke, you tickle it, which is literally pushing down this little plunger, which causes the float to stay down and overflow fuel. You just throw a bunch of fuel down the throat of the thing. It's very messy, and that's why these things are covered in old fuel. And then the big single thing, you find your place to start. You find compression. And then once you're on compression, there's a little device here called a compression release. You let that go, it actually opens the exhaust valve and allows the piston to move a little bit. Now, the key is knowing how far to move it past compression. I just tell people it's a little bit, it's a nudge or two, maybe 2.5 nudges sometimes. Later big singles like the SR500 Yamaha, kickstart only bikes, they actually put a little window on the top, on the camshaft, so you can see a little marker where you're supposed to put it. These ones, you just kind of got to feel it out. The reason you do this, as an aside, is that you need to get as much energy as you can into spinning the motor. So if you just jump on it in any random place, you're not going to be optimally giving it the rotational force that it needs. So you get it past compression so that when you jump on it, you kick it through the overlap stroke, really let it spin, and then come back up on its next compression and fire stroke with a bunch of speed in the piston. That's what it's all about. All these techniques are trying to do that. An old machine like this, throttle position is really key. You can't just crank it. You'll have too much air, it won't start. Sometimes you got to give it a little bit. Sometimes you don't touch them at all. You really have to learn the details of your bike, even down to the exact, not just the model, but certain bikes, one model of that same bike one example of that same model will need a little throttle. The other one won't. Has to do with the condition of the motor, condition of the carb, air filter, all that kind of stuff. So let's see what it does. Hopefully this will fire right up. Ooh, almost. I'm going to give it a little tickle because I started talking after the initial tickle. This one is really not doing what we want. So as I said, notoriously hard starters. This one is in here for a little tuning for hard starting. I had it as a one kicker yesterday. Today, it seems like I may have flooded it a little bit. Maybe it's a little too warm for all that fuel after all. But anyway, as you can see, difficult. You just got to play with them. You got to learn what they want, and as long as you can do that, they're not so bad. Now, next generation, 1972. Actually, only a few years apart, but technologically, completely different thing. You got your overhead cam, inline multi-cylinder. As we've told the story before, Honda came and just wiped the floor with these Brit bikes as far as technology, ease of use, etc. These bikes had electric start, which is pretty fancy. You just press a button and theoretically go. They also were still equipped with the Kickstarter because we weren't quite sure yet how it was all going to work out with the electric start, and people also just like to kickstart their bike sometimes. So it's a lot easier to start one of these, but it's not without its difficulties, and we have a lot of customers who love the vintage Hondas, but have a hard time starting them. They're relatively simple, but they take a little something different. So just like with the BSA, the fuel is off, we start by turning it on. Almost without fail, I found that, so this doesn't have a choke, a tickler, excuse me, does have a choke. Almost without fail, 70s Hondas want to start with a ton of choke, and here's the key part. The throttle wants to be cracked like a 32nd of a turn. Not like that, and definitely not like that. It will not start open. But you kind of find, you take the tension off the cable, and then just turn it the slightest little bit, and then you hit the button, bada bing, it wants to go. But again, we have customers come in, can't start their bikes. They're wailing on this thing wide open, and it wants a ton of choke till it starts. And as soon as it starts, you knock the choke off just like a 1/10 of a turn until it warms up, and then you take it off completely. So they're easier than those old BSAs and other Brit bikes, but not without their little techniques and tricks and stuff. Now this brings us to the modern era. Ducati Multistrada, I forget what year. It's our cameraman and video producer Todd's bike. But it comes, 2010, all right. It comes with a fob. The fob has RFID chips in it. It has digital stuff, so you can come over and not even put the key in, just stand near it, have it in your pocket, and flip up, flip off. No, there we go. Do all that, and then you hit start button, and bada bing, you're off on your way. Also has where the key would go, you have another alternative button, which as long as the key is near, you press that, the bike goes on, and bada bing. And should you lose this, or it runs out of batteries or something, you can even start the bike by typing in a special fancy code and stuff. And this thing is fuel injected, no choke, no anything weird like that. You just hit the button, it figures out what else it needs to do, and off you go. So we've come a long way. These are definitely way easier, but you can impress a lot of people by being able to start those old things. So the bottom line is, if you get an old machine, take your time learning how to start it. It'll save you a ton of headache and make it that much more fun. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and keep looking.